Hi everyone, Chris here. How are you all doing? Back with another Profit Squirrel vlog. And today what I wanted to do is give you some tips, a checklist if you will, for a few things that you should look out for before you place your match bet. It's a good idea just to get into the habit of running through these few things just before you actually hit that place bet button at the bookmaker and the exchange. And that way you're going to understand more what you're doing. You're going to make sure that you don't make any silly or little mistakes, and you're going to make sure that you make more profits in the long run. So with that being said, let's get into it. So the first thing I would say to check is, are the odds correct that you're doing the calculation with? So we have the odds on the odds matcher here, and we can bring those up into the calculator. For example, this France-Belgium game under over, and we're getting the back odds as 1.36 and the lay odds as 1.4. Now the odds matcher software is pretty fast, and I would say it's accurate 99.9% of the time in terms of the odds that it gives you, but the bookmakers or the exchanges can be a little bit faster sometimes. So when you actually go and find this event at the bookmaker, and if that's the case, the thing that will have changed is the lay stake, this number here. So all you would do is, say you go into the exchange and actually the new exchange odds are 1.41 or maybe 1.39. Let's say they're 1.39 in the exchange now. What you would just do is go into this box here and change the odds, 1.39, hit return, and you'll see it recalculates your new lay stake, and that will just make sure that everything is nicely balanced. If the odds are different and you don't recalculate it, generally it's not such a big deal, but what it will mean is that your outcome of your bet will just be different, normally by a few pence either way. And with match betting, we always like to know exactly what the outcome will be before we place any bets. That way we're not surprised by anything, and that way we can make sure that we're not taking any risks. A little point I'd add to this as well is that when you're on the bookmaker and the exchange site, for example, I'm on Betfair here, just always make sure that the odds you're viewing are in decimals, and that way they'll line up really nicely with what you see on the odds matcher and the odds calculator. It should be pretty obvious on most bookmaker and exchange sites where you go to change the odds, but if you can't figure it out, get in touch with the bookmaker directly or drop us a line here at Profit Squirrel and you'll see where you need to make the change. You can also use the formula to convert fractional odds into decimal odds, which is really easy. So say the odds are 5 over 2, then you would just divide 5 by 2, which is 2.5, and then you just add 1 to that. So 5 over 2 would be the equivalent of 3.5. But it's normally easier and much faster just to change how the odds are displayed on the interface itself. Tip number 2 is make sure you're looking at the correct market for your bet type. With time, this will become really easy and intuitive for you, but when you're just getting used to things, it's something that I recommend you check carefully just to make sure that you're betting on the right market for the result that you want. So for example, in this one on the screen here, the odds matcher is calling it the over-under market, and we're basically placing a back bet that there will be over 1.5 goals and a lay bet that there will not be over 1.5 goals. Now that's pretty simple to understand, but the thing to watch out for is that the market is sometimes called different things by different bookmakers and by different exchanges. So for example here, over under, we're looking for over 1.5. So I'm going to go to Coral here, and this is the game, France-Belgium, and over under is not actually one of their available markets here. They just include that under this market here of goals. So if I click that, you'll see there it does say over under, total goals over under, but it's grouped under just the general header of goals. So you just want to make sure that you'd be in the right spot for that. And we can see here that we've got the back bet of over 1.5, 1.36, and that's exactly what matches up with my odds matcher. It's possible though that you might find other bets which also have odds of 1.36, and that could be confusing, so just double check that you're in the right market here. On the exchange as well, it's also under goals, and you'll see over under, here we are, laying over 1.5 goals at 1.4. which is again exactly what I'm seeing on my odds matcher here, 1.4. I would tell you to be particularly careful in this area when you're placing bets in markets that sound quite similar. So for example, halftime score, halftime full time, or France to win both halves. All of those bets are quite different markets, but they can sound kind of similar. And as I mentioned in one of the other videos, some of those sometimes get confused with one another. If you're struggling to find any of the markets, hit up the Bookmaker live chat, or again, get in touch with Profit Squirrel and we'll help you locate it. Tip number 3 is to check if there is enough availability in the exchange that you want to use before you try and place your lay bet. If there isn't enough availability, then your bet will become what's called partially matched because there isn't enough liquidity or availability of funds in the market to fully match your bet. Now, typically this isn't really an issue because as the event gets closer to starting, more money tends to come into the market, so your bet should be matched off fully. However, it's something that I always like to try and avoid, and I would suggest you try and avoid it whenever you can because it can cause headaches. The way you check that is by going into your calculator here and taking a look at what the amount is that you need to lay, what your lay stake is. So continuing with this over under 1.5 golds example, that would be £10 and 7 pence here. And if I was going to lay this in Betfair, I would go here and look at the right lay market, which is this one here, 1.4, and I'll see that there's £214 available in that market. So that availability is much greater than the £10 and 7 pence that I need to successfully make that match, to fully match it. So that's probably not going to be a problem. One tip I would give to you here is be aware when the availability is kind of close to the lay stake. And if that's the case, what can sometimes happen is somebody can come in and say this market availability was only £30 or £50. That would still be more than your lay stake, so you probably would be fine, but somebody may come in just before you place your match and match it off say £40 or £45 or something, which would mean there would be not quite enough availability left for you. So just be aware of that could be a possibility if the market is quite thin, as we say, if there's not much money in it. The way to get around that is just to place your back bet and lay bet quickly once you've calculated that it's the right one for you. But if you want to avoid that completely, then stick to markets where there's a huge amount of availability. So for example, on this one here, laying the draw, there's £48,704 in this market, which means that your £10 lay stake is basically guaranteed to be matched unless somebody goes and places a £48,000 lay bet, which probably isn't going to happen. Fourth quick tip I'd give you is to make sure that you're in the exchange section of the exchange website. Now, some exchanges like Smarkets, they pretty much are just an exchange. They don't have what's called a sportsbook, so they don't do the bookmaker element of it. But something like Betfair and Ladbrokes Exchange, for example, they actually have, you'll see here, a sportsbook. So if I click on that, that is basically a bookmaker site. And what you want to do when you're hunting for your odds is make sure you always use the exchange. It should be pretty easy to identify where you are because on the sportsbook there won't be any options to lay bets, but it's something you just want to check, and it can be a point of confusion for people when they're just starting out. They can't seem to find the odds that they need, and typically it's because they're on the sportsbook and they're not on the exchange. So just make sure you're in the right place. My final tip is funding. As I pointed out, it's better if you can place your back and lay bets fairly quickly once you're comfortable with doing so and once you understand the process well. And of course you do that so that the odds or availability don't change at all or too much. And in order to help you do that, you just want to make sure you have enough funds in the appropriate exchange in order to cover this amount, to cover the liability. So I like to always keep my exchange topped up, because that way, if I have a bit of a time sensitive bet, something that I need to get in quite quickly, or something that I just want to make sure it goes off without any hitches, I want to make sure that there's enough money in my exchange to cover that and it goes through without any problems. If you don't have enough money in your exchange and you try to place a lay bet with them, the exchange will prompt you to top up, which you can easily do, and it normally only just takes you a few seconds. But it can be another little hurdle, and to do really smooth match betting, it's best just to make sure you've got everything in place beforehand. I hope those tips have been helpful for you. As I said, when you've been match betting a little while, all of this stuff is going to seem really, really simple to you, and you probably already do all the stuff I mentioned, but it's good just to run through a little checklist, just to make sure you're doing things the correct way. It's kind of like a pilot. If a pilot is going to take off with a plane, they always work through a written checklist. Even if it's their 500th flight, they always have to go through the checklist, because it can be easy just to forget one or two things. And obviously the consequences of a pilot forgetting one or two things is quite major, but at the same time, we don't want you to forget anything that you should be looking for when you're match betting, because that's going to reduce your profits potentially. And we want to make sure that we know exactly what's happening and that we're going to be locking in profits every single time. Drop me any comments below if you have any. I'd love to hear what you think, and please like and subscribe to Profit Squirrel, and I'll see you very soon in another Profit Squirrel vlog. Thanks for watching, guys.